Welcome to Sacred Pathways to Wholeness. I'm Pamela Bridgeman Bartell. Thank you for joining me today. On this podcast, we make room for reflection, for stillness, for scripture, and for the ongoing work of healing in the presence of God. Today's reflection is called Walking Toward Wholeness, One Sacred Step. We live in a world that values speed. We're often taught to admire quick change, visible results, and immediate progress. That pressure can shape how we think about our spiritual lives, our healing, and our growth. We may begin to believe that if God is working, then everything should move faster. We may assume that if we are praying, trying, and trusting, we should already be further along. But wholeness is rarely instant. Wholeness is gradual. It unfolds over time. It deepens through surrender. It grows through repeated acts of faithfulness. And that can be difficult to accept, especially when we're tired, discouraged, or longing for clarity. We want answers. We want relief. We want resolution. And we want to know that the unfinished places in us are finally settled. But often, life with God is not about immediate arrival. It's about faithful movement. And sometimes the holiest thing we can do is to take the next sacred step. Let's begin with scripture from Micah 6:8. He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. And from Philippians 1:6, he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Jesus Christ. These passages offer both invitation and comfort. Micah reminds us that faith is a walk. It is not merely something we believe, it is something we live. We are called to walk with God in justice, mercy, and humility. Philippians reminds us that our growth is not sustained by our strength alone. The God who began the good work in us is the same God who continues it. That matters because many people are not only weary from what they're carrying, they are weary from trying to complete it themselves. And that burden was never meant to rest entirely on you. Wholeness is not instant. It is cumulative. It's often formed through small acts of faithfulness repeated over time. A prayer whispered in exhaustion, a truth finally spoken, a decision to rest, a healthy boundary set, a moment of surrender, or a choice to begin again. These steps may seem small, but they matter. Sometimes we underestimate what God is doing because we are looking for something dramatic. We want the breakthrough moment, the final answer, the clear finish line. But often God works quietly. Just as roots grow beneath the surface before fruit appears, there are seasons when God is doing deep work in us that is not yet visible. That can be frustrating because we prefer measurable progress. We want to know that something is happening. We want to feel certain that we are moving forward. But healing and spiritual growth are not always obvious in the moment. Sometimes they unfold slowly. Sometimes they come in layers. Sometimes the work of God is not loud, but steady. One of the struggles many of us face is that we demand completion when God is asking for movement. We want the whole path. God gives the next step. We want certainty. God gives enough light for today. We want to be finished. God invites us to keep walking. This is where humility becomes essential. Micah says to walk humbly with your God. Humility means accepting what we do not control the entire process. It means we stop insisting that we must understand everything before we obey anything. It means we stop measuring our lives only by what is completed and begin paying attention to what is faithful. Humility says, I don't have to force what God is forming. I don't have to know the whole road before I take it. I don't have to despise small beginnings. I don't have to carry the burden of finishing what God is still doing. That is sacred humility. Micah also tells us to love mercy. That matters because many people are trying to walk toward wholeness while being harsh with themselves. They judge their pace, they shame their struggles, criticize their need for rest. They grow impatient with their humanity. But mercy matters in the healing process. What if part of becoming whole is learning not to condemn yourself for still being in process? What if mercy means you stop treating slow growth as failure? What if mercy means you can tell the truth about your life without turning against yourself? Mercy is not denial, it's not passivity, it's not pretending everything is fine. It's honesty in the presence of grace. And grace is where true transformation takes root. Philippians 1:6 gives us a promise. He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. Notice where the confidence rests, not in your perfection, not in your consistency, not in your ability to hold yourself together at all times. The confidence rests in God. God began the work, carries the work, God completes the work. That doesn't mean you have no role. You're called to respond, to trust, to obey, to listen, and to keep walking with God. But it does mean that your hope is not in your flawless effort. Your hope is in God's faithfulness. That's good news because sometimes we become discouraged by our unfinished places. We think, I should be further along by now. We assume that because something is still tender, still unresolved, or still developing, God must not be working. But unfinished doesn't mean abandoned. Slow doesn't mean stagnant. Ongoing does not mean failing. Sometimes the very fact that something is still being revealed is evidence that God is still at work. Don't underestimate small acts of faithfulness. Getting out of bed may be a sacred step. Making the call may be a sacred step. Choosing prayer over panic, resting without grief, resting without guilt, telling the truth may all be sacred steps. Asking for help may be a sacred step. Beginning again may be a sacred step. Not every holy moment is visible. Not every deep act of courage is dramatic. Sometimes sacred movement is quiet. Sometimes it looks like restraint or like surrender. Sometimes it looks like grief. It may look like endurance. But if that step is drawing you toward truth, toward God, toward healing, toward faithfulness, it matters. Let's pause. Take a slow breath in. Gently exhale. Take another breath in. Release it slowly. Put your hands on your chest. Let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw unclench if you can. And simply notice that God is present. Now ask yourself quietly, what is my next faithful step? Not every step after that, just the next one. Now ask, where am I demanding completion instead of movement? Ask, how can I trust God's ongoing work in me, even here? There's no need to force an answer, just make room. Sometimes clarity comes right away. Sometimes it comes later in prayer, in stillness, in journaling, or in a wise conversation. But asking matters, listening matters, willingness matters. If you're listening today and you feel weary, take heart. You don't have to arrive all at once. You don't have to become whole in a single moment. You do not have to finish what God is still forming. You are invited to walk. Walk humbly, receive mercy, trust the one who began the good work in you. Keep moving even if the movement feels small. And perhaps that's enough for today. Not perfection, not total clarity, not finished healing. Just one sacred step. And that step, taken with God, is never wasted. As you move through the rest of your day or into the coming week, reflect on these questions. What is my next faithful step? Where am I demanding completion instead of movement? How can I trust God's ongoing work in me? And perhaps also this, what small act of faithfulness have I been overlooking that may actually be sacred? Sit with these gently. Let them accompany you. May the sovereign Lord continue the good work within you. May each step be guided, sustained, and blessed. May you be given grace for the unfinished places, patience for the ongoing work, and courage for the road ahead. May you resist the pressure to demand arrival when God is inviting faithful movement. And may you walk forward in hope, one sacred step at a time. Thank you for joining me on Sacred Pathways to Wholeness. If this episode encouraged you, please take a moment to like, comment, and share. And be sure to visit Amazon to explore my books for more reflections and resources to support your healing journey. Until next time, grace and peace to you.